You've heard 1,000 versions of his story. The healer, the teacher, the man who walked dusty roads and spoke in gentle parables. But almost no one was told about the hidden teachings of Jesus, how he spoke one message to the crowds and a very different one to the few who could handle it. The part that was kept back wasn't about being nicer or trying harder. It was about where the kingdom really is and what he saw in you. So let me ask you something simple. What if the peace you've always felt was missing was never meant for the masses at all? Imagine this. It's late at night. You're standing alone in your living room. Lights off. The world finally quiet. For a moment, your own breath is louder than everything else. In that small pocket of silence, something inside you stirs. Not fear, not confusion, a quiet recognition. Most people would ignore it. You didn't. You paused. You listened. And whether you realized it or not, that moment is why you're here. Because somewhere beneath the noise of your life, there's always been a faint sense that the explanations you were given never fully matched what your soul kept whispering. A hunger for the part of the story that wasn't printed, preached, or safely approved, only guarded. Here's the twist. It's not because you're special in the way the world defines special. It's because you can feel the crack beneath ordinary reality, the place where the familiar story no longer holds. Tonight, that crack becomes a doorway. Because behind the familiar version, behind the public teachings repeated for centuries, there is a thread of truth. A thread meant only for those who could feel it before they could name it. Once that thread lands in your chest, the old version of the story will never fit you again. If something is already stirring in you, good. That's the sign. Step with me now. What waits on the other side will change the way you see everything. Most people imagine ancient Judea in daylight, crowds gathering, dust rising, voices echoing across open roads. But the teachings that mattered most didn't happen under the sun. They unfolded when the city dimmed to a low murmur, when torches burned low and only a few remained, the ones this video is really for. Come with me there. The night is warm. A faint wind carries the smell of cooking fires drifting from the homes below. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks, then falls quiet again. On a small hillside beyond the city walls, a handful of people sit around a fading ember, not hiding, but listening in a way the daytime never allowed. They aren't saints or scholars. Their hands are rough from labor. Their clothes smell of salt and sweat. Life has pressed them in 1,000 ways, yet something in their eyes tells him they can sense more than they can articulate. Jesus studies them with a calm that isn't theatrical. It's recognition. And then he says the line almost everyone glosses over. To you it has been given to know. Why? Why them? Why not the priests who memorized scripture, or the educated who debated every detail of the law? Why did he divide his message at all? The answer is sharper than most people realize. He wasn't separating worthy from unworthy. He was separating those who listened with their minds from those who listened with their awareness. He didn't give this to the crowds, only to a hidden inner circle, the ones who could feel something beneath ordinary religion, something the public language of parables could only gesture toward. And here's what almost everyone misses. He wasn't teaching information. He was activating perception. The crowds heard stories about seeds and fields, but these few heard something else entirely, an opening, a shift, the subtle sense that the world around them wasn't as fixed or simple as it appeared. Have you ever felt that? A moment when something ordinary suddenly felt layered, as if a second meaning was hiding just beneath the surface? If you have, then you already understand why this group was different. They weren't being told what to believe. They were being shown how to see. And that shift, from outer noise to inner recognition, was only the first key. The next would overturn everything people believed about where the kingdom actually lives. Let's start with something simple. The same split Jesus made between the crowds and the inner circle is still happening now, inside the smallest corners of your everyday life. You've had moments, maybe while driving, washing dishes, or scrolling your phone, when a quiet question rose from somewhere deeper. Is this really all there is? Most people silence that question before it even forms, but you didn't, and that alone tells us more than any doctrine or label ever could. Because the second teaching he shared privately wasn't a rule or a belief. It was a shift in perception, an inversion of where people assumed truth lived. Picture him speaking softly while others slept. What you seek is already here. Not in the sky, not locked behind rituals. Here, in the awareness listening right now. This is where the misunderstanding begins. People spend their lives searching for something they never stop touching. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a reflection. Always present, yet impossible to grasp directly. That's why he spoke in symbols to the crowds. They needed stories. But with those who sensed the subtle shift beneath their routines, he turned the symbol inward. He wasn't pointing upward. He was pointing into the one direction the world trains you to ignore. Outward is easy. You can measure success, fear, failure, relationships, expectations. You chase meaning through movement, but inward, that's where the ground changes. A person who turns fully inward becomes immune to the noise that governs everyone else. They don't move from fear. They don't collapse under pressure. They begin to live from the still point within. The place he meant when he spoke of the kingdom, not as a destination, but as consciousness awake to itself. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt a clarity that didn't come from thought, a knowing that appeared before your mind had words for it? That tiny flash is not doubt. It's the beginning of spiritual awakening, the same recognition the early Gnostic Christians tried to protect when the world wasn't ready to hear it. And once you've felt it even once, no belief system can fully contain you again. And that's exactly why the most dangerous part of his message had to be kept hidden. Because the moment someone realizes truth arises from within, the outer world loses its power over them. Think back to a moment you've lived without ever naming it. You were in a conversation, words flowing, gestures moving, and then something subtle shifted. A quiet observer inside you began watching the whole scene from a deeper stillness. It didn't react. It didn't judge. It simply saw. And for that brief instant, you weren't just the person speaking. You were the awareness beneath the person, the presence witnessing everything from behind your thoughts. This is the shift Jesus tried to reveal to the few he trusted. Because the mind can be taught, but awareness must be recognized. And once someone feels that inner witness, even for a single breath, something loosens inside them. The identity built from years of roles, expectations, and borrowed stories suddenly feels thinner, like a costume that no longer fits. That's where the real transformation begins. You stop asking, "Who am I supposed to be?" and start sensing, "What is seeing through me?" His private teaching overturned the entire foundation of identity. You are not the story. You are the awareness the story arises within. Hearing that is one thing. Feeling it is another, because when you know you are the witness, not the noise, not the past, not the role, you expand beyond the limits you once defended. So let's slow the moment down. Place your attention not on your breath, not on your body, but on the awareness, noticing both. Do you sense that quiet, unchanging space behind your thoughts? The one that remains still, even as your emotions shift. That is your original identity. And when you touch it, even lightly, old patterns begin to dissolve, not by force, but because they no longer feel like you. This is why those who remember their inner sovereignty have always been the hardest for the world to control. They stop confusing the mask with the one wearing it. They move differently, steady, clear, inwardly free. This shift, this movement from identification to awareness, is what Jesus called being born from above, not as ritual, as recognition. And once it happens, nothing external can fully own you again. If this part of the message is landing in you, leave a single word in the comments. Aware. Not to impress anyone, but as a quiet signal for other hidden ones who are waking up too. It's strange how the body reveals its secrets only when you stop trying to analyze it and simply feel it. Not emotionally, physically. In those rare pauses when you're not thinking about your body but sensing from within it, something unexpected appears. And that's exactly where Jesus led his inner circle, not toward belief, but toward direct perception, where flesh and consciousness quietly meet. Think of your hands for a moment. You've known their shape all your life, but if you soften your attention, you'll sense something beneath the surface, a faint hum, a low, steady vibration. Most people brush it off as imagination, but it isn't. It's the first layer of your inner luminosity. The subtle field mystics described long before science spoke about electromagnetic signatures around living beings. This is the first taste of what they later called the light body, the way resurrection consciousness begins long before the body dies. And this is the point where his teaching quietly overturns everything you were taught about being only human. Jesus hinted at this when he said, "If your eye is single, your whole body will be filled with light." To the crowds, it sounded poetic. To the few closest to him, it was literal. When awareness stops scattering outward and folds back into itself, the body shifts. The breath deepens, the system calms. The field around you brightens in ways you feel before anyone else can see. And it isn't theory. You can test it right now. Bring your attention gently to the space above your heart, not the physical touch, but the sensation itself. Don't force anything, just notice. If you sense warmth, pressure, or a soft expansion, that's the flicker of the mystical body, the threshold where matter leans into energy, and energy leans into awareness. This is where the body stops feeling like a cage and starts revealing itself as a vessel, an instrument designed for awakening. And once even a hint of this recognition dawns, something profound shifts. You stop seeing the body as something you're trapped inside and start seeing it as intentional, intelligent, sacred. The same awareness that watches your thoughts is the awareness animating your heartbeat, your breath, your cellular rhythm. It isn't separate from you. It is you, expressed through layers. This was the secret Jesus couldn't speak in the public squares. Divinity doesn't descend from above. It rises from within the living structure of your being. And once you feel even a spark of that inner vitality, you stop searching for the sacred outside yourself. You realize it has been glowing within you the entire time. There comes a moment on this path when the truth stops whispering and begins pressing against the edges of everything you once believed. It doesn't arrive with noise. It begins like a hairline crack across a familiar wall, subtle, quiet, but impossible to ignore. And that crack is where the next revelation enters. Because up to now, you've felt the witness within. You've sensed the quiet intelligence inside the body. But the deeper secret, the one Jesus revealed only after someone crossed that inner threshold, is far more disruptive. The world around you responds more to your consciousness than to your actions. Most people treat reality like a fixed stage, but anyone who becomes aware of the witness within notices something strange. The outer world bends, small patterns align. Someone you were thinking about calls you. An obstacle dissolves the moment you stop wrestling with it. You've seen hints of this, haven't you? And it's not coincidence. And it's not manifestation the way people talk about it today. It's resonance, the field of life echoing the state of the one who perceives it. Jesus never described the kingdom within as a distant reward. He described it as the underlying structure of spiritual reality, a living, energetic blueprint responsive to the frequency of your awareness. What you hold internally becomes the tone the world reflects back to you, not because you summon outcomes, but because perception colors everything you experience. Shift the state, and the world rearranges around it. This is why he told his inner circle, "You will do greater works," not as metaphor, but as principle. When consciousness aligns with its own source, it doesn't beg reality to move. It is the shift. The only thing that keeps most people from experiencing this is the state they live inside. Fear, guilt, unworthiness. Old frequency cages, built long before they ever questioned them. A person trapped inside those stories always feels as though life is happening to them rather than through them. But the moment someone realizes the field is responding to their inner state, everything changes. They become steady, clear, impossible to control through fear. The world stops defining them. They begin defining their experience of the world. That's the threshold Jesus pointed to, the moment the outer narrative loses its power because the inner one has awakened. But even that isn't the most dangerous part. The real threat to every system was what he said next about who you actually are. There is a point in every ancient teaching where the language changes. No more symbols, no more parables, just the raw truth, the kind that's only spoken when someone has crossed the inner threshold. This was that moment. Jesus looked at his closest circle and revealed the secret that could never be spoken to the crowds. The source that speaks through me is the same source awakening in you. Not almost, not echoing, the same. Sit with that for a second. It means the distance you were taught to feel, the gap between human and divine, follower and master, was not a cosmic law. It was a story. A story the world wasn't ready to outgrow. But he wasn't trying to build a religion of spectators. He wasn't gathering people around him to make himself untouchable. He was awakening them into the same recognition that moved through him. This is the shift into what many now call Christ consciousness, the moment the second coming stops being a figure in the sky and becomes the second coming within the awakened human heart. Have you ever felt that flicker? The sense that something inside you was older than your thoughts, calmer than your fears, more real than the roles you play? That wasn't imagination. That was the same source, pressing against the edges of who you thought you were. And this is the part the world could never afford to let go public. Because a person who realizes the infinite speaks through their own awareness can no longer be bought, threatened, or controlled. Once you know the light is inside you, no one can sell it to you. Once you know the doorway is within, no one can stand in front of it. Once you know the divine is not something you worship but something you awaken, every layer of borrowed identity begins to fall away. Maybe you've felt it already, in a quiet moment, in a flash of intuition that arrived before thought, in the way certain truths land in your chest long before they make sense in your mind. Those weren't random. They were reminders, echoes of the same consciousness he spoke of, reaching you from within your own awareness. You were never meant to worship the awakened one. You were meant to awaken alongside him, not because fate picked you out of a crowd, but because your perception has reached the point where this truth can no longer stay dormant, and once it rises, everything shifts. The way you see yourself, the way the world responds to you. This is the moment the old identity dissolves, not through effort, but because it was never the real you. The curtain is already lifting. The only question now is simple. Will you step into who you actually are? Everything in this journey has been guiding you here, not toward an ending, but toward a return. A return to the part of you that never lost the thread, even when the world tried to silence it. Awakening isn't about becoming something new. It's the dissolving of everything that kept you from seeing what was always present. So take one breath, slow and steady. Feel the awareness behind it. That quiet presence is the same pulse Jesus revealed in the hidden teachings he shared with those who could hold it. Not a distant deity, not a voice in the clouds. The living intelligence moving through your perception in this exact moment. And now, seal this recognition. Whisper these 3 lines, not as belief, but as remembrance. The light is within me. The source moves through me. I remember who I am. Let the words settle into your chest like an ancient lock, finally clicking open. Because right now, whether it feels like a spark or a steady flame, something in you has stepped forward. Something older than fear, quieter than thought, and truer than your name. This is where the path curves inward, into the quiet chamber, where those who sense the pulse beneath the visible world gather in a circle of remembrance. If this transmission about the hidden teachings of Jesus and the kingdom within spoke to something ancient inside you, leave a single word in the comments. One word becomes your mark, your signal to other awakening souls that they are not walking alone. And when you're ready, let your next action reflect your vow. Like this video to carry the flame forward. Subscribe to stay within this current of remembrance. Your path doesn't end here. It begins here, quietly, unmistakably, like a spark finally finding oxygen. You have stepped through the threshold. The inner chamber is open. The light has returned to you.